Welcome to Archive Dive. I'm Maria Lockwood, a reporter with the Superior Telegram. Each month, we dip into files on historic events, people, and places in Superior and Douglas County with local historians. Today, we dive into the history of a World War II veteran who the Blatnik Bridge was named for. As a Minnesota congressman, Chisholm native John Blatnik was instrumental in getting the bridge between Duluth and Superior built. As a captain and paratrooper with the U.S. Army Air Force, Blatnik spent 8 months working behind enemy lines in Yugoslavia. The work included setting up an escape system for downed American airmen. One of them was a Duluth man, Swante Norlund. Helping us dive into the story today is Brianna Fyant, curator of collections and exhibits for the Richard I. Bong Veterans Historical Center. Thanks for joining us, Brianna.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you so much for having me here.
Definitely. Now, the Blatnik Bridge is in the public eye right now because of the upcoming billion-dollar replacement that is about to happen.
Yeah, and it's great timing because I've actually been working on this way before the bridge came into the public eye.
Excellent. Because I think a lot of people know who the Bong Bridge was named for, but not many people know much about John Blatnik.
Right. I never knew who the bridge was named after either until somebody came into the museum and he brought some pictures that he had, and it was a footlocker and it had the name Blatnik on it. And he told me, well, this is John Blatnik's footlocker. Mm-hmm. And he said, the guy who the bridge is named after. And I was like, oh, really? I didn't know he was a World War II veteran. And so I started talking a little bit more to this man, and he didn't know a lot, but he said, yeah, I think he was in the Army Air Forces. And so then I just started doing some research, and I found out that he had a really incredible story over there that at least nobody at our museum had ever heard before. You're right. He was a paratrooper. He joined the OSS. The OSS was the Office of Strategic Services.
Office of Strategic Services. What was that?
So that was the organization that would come to be the CIA after World War II. But during World War II, they were involved in going behind enemy lines, military intelligence, trying to do sabotage, to the enemy, all in secret. So that they were doing all of this in secret.
And Blatnik was a member of this.
And Blatnik was recruited into this because he had grown up with Slovenian parents. So his parents immigrated to Chisholm, and he was born just 2 years after his mother came to the Iron Range. And he grew up speaking Slovenian. He didn't even know English when he first went into kindergarten.
Really?
So because of those language skills, he was a prime candidate for this. Yugoslavia had fallen to the Germans. They were occupied, but there was an intense resistance movement in Yugoslavia, in the Yugoslavian area. It had now been split up along ethnic lines, but there were partisans who worked with Tito. It was called Chetniks, which worked with Mihailovic.
And he worked with Tito's.
And he worked with Tito's partisans. It's a very complicated political system dynamic that's going on over there. But basically, the two resistance groups were fighting each other in a civil war and also fighting to get the Germans out. It's very complicated, but
wow.
It was very dangerous.
It sounds like it. And he spent 8 months there?
And he did spend 8 months there. So
how did he get there? If it's behind enemy lines, how did he even get to it?
So I'll just go back a little bit and say He didn't have to do any of this. He had already been elected a congressperson. They were not required to.
He wasn't required to serve?
He wasn't required to serve. He could not be drafted.
Okay.
But he volunteered for this, and he was quickly picked up by the OSS. So not just the language skills, they did extensive background checks on him. He went through a lot of training. There was a lot of physical and mental training. Like, can you handle the circumstances? Because you're going to be behind enemy lines. You're not going to have any help. You're on your own. Nobody's going to save you. So they do a lot of testing and personality testing before they even get you into the OSS.
Wow. And he passed, obviously.
And he passed, yes.
So he had to.
Then in 1943, the Allies got Italy back. And so that became the staging base to get over into the enemy lines in the Baltic region there.
Okay. And did he fly in? Did he cross by foot?
No, they flew him in, and then he would jump and parachute in at night. I'm sure it was terrifying. And one of the things I read is that they're not only taking themselves over, but they're taking all of their equipment over. So they're also dropping radios, food, supply kits for the downed airmen that they're going to find. So they're taking all of this stuff over, dropping it down at night, and then scrambling to get it. And they always drop 2 radios because if one breaks, they have a backup because that radio is their only link to the outside world.
Wow. And nobody knew he had done this, huh?
I mean, I'm sure people knew, but it wasn't, at least for us, it wasn't in the common conscience. I've never read a book that included anything about his service. He did an oral history for the Minnesota Historical Society, but he only mentioned his service in a couple brief sentences and then moved on. It was largely because it was classified materials that he couldn't talk about it for a long time.
And did he ever say how many airmen he helped?
380. So
380?
His team, but they're small teams. But yeah, his team was responsible for getting 380 downed airmen out.
How would they do that?
So, okay, so let's take it from the perspective of a downed airman.
Okay.
So they land and they immediately have to get anything that identifies them off of them. So any identifying uniform parts, they have to hide as quickly as possible because certainly somebody was seeing the plane crash and knew that there might be survivors. So hide as soon as possible. But one of the great things about this area is the resistance movement was incredible. I think it's probably the most effective resistance group that has ever been put together.
Really?
In World War II, for sure. They would go to any lengths to save these airmen. So in case of one man that I know that was from Duluth that jumped and survived to the ground, he went and hid in a foxhole, basically, with another man who had gangrene in the leg. Oh. The smell in the hole was atrocious. And they lived there for 3 days until they could get a partisan come get them out and then take them to safe places.
Oh, my goodness. Now, was that Swante?
That is Swante Norlund.
Okay. And what was the rest of his journey like?
So it wasn't just getting to a safe place and then staying there. It was about 3 months for him. He crashed in November and was saved and was then united with Blatnik and got out in March. So there was no one safe place. So they're running. The partisans are keeping them moving all over the country, trying to evade the Germans. You're going from house to house, not hiding up in the attics, hiding in the basements. Swante went from 150 to 110 pounds in that 3 months.
Wow.
Very little food, no bathing,
Was there medical care?
He did get medical care because he had hurt his arm. So they did bind his arm up. It did need to be rebroken and fixed once he was saved. But yeah, they did get some rudimentary medical care.
Okay. And eventually they're able to fly these men out?
They are. So what happened is Swante made it to this town named Paca, and that is the town that Blatnik is in with his radio man. So it's just Blatnik and one radio man. And now they've gotten, I think they had 11 men now put together. And Swante was lucky. He had been on his own. So imagine the excitement of now being back with your own men and being able to speak English and understand again. So Blatnik called in 3 C-47s and got them to come in. And again, it's all at night. You don't have airstrip lights like you think of now because they're landing in a field. So they start little fires all along the perimeter of the field to guide the airplane in.
That must have been some fancy flying.
Yeah, very good pilots back then. So then initially the plane did not land. He had gotten a false password. So it was all like cloak and dagger kind of stuff. And the pilot that was flying over got the wrong password. And so he didn't land and came to find out that was a good thing because he was over the wrong airfield. So it was very important to trust those passwords. So, but then the next night, 3 planes came in and landed. And the next morning they took off. Everybody made it out okay, except the 3rd plane couldn't quite get up over it was too heavily loaded and it couldn't quite get up over the trees and a river that was bordering the area, and it crashed. Unfortunately, Swante was on that plane.
Oh, no.
So, but it all worked out okay. And they got another plane in the next day and he made it home.
Okay. What did he say about his interactions with Blatnik? What was Blatnik like over there to work with?
The only thing I have on that is that they met after the war in 1947 at a labor meeting in Duluth. And it was basically just an introduction and Swante saying, "Hey, Captain, do you remember me?" and that they had a long conversation after that. But it didn't really detail too much about what they said.
No. Love to have been a bug on the wall there, huh?
Yeah.
What was his service like prior? Now, he didn't start out just jumping into the OSS, right?
He did, pretty much.
Really? So
yes.
And he was already a congressman at the time?
Yes, he was.
So did someone else take his seat while he was overseas?
Good question. I'm not sure about that one.
Okay.
If it was left empty or if a substitute was put in.
How old was he at the time?
He was in his late 20s. He was the youngest Minnesota congressperson at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did he make the decision to join? Do you know?
I think he just felt very strongly about, especially this part of the world, and doing his part. He had grown up, of course, speaking Slovenian. He had gone over to Slovenia in the 20s with his mother.
Okay.
And had visited family, and they had learned the country a little bit. And I think he felt like he had really valuable skills that could help.
Mm-hmm.
He spoke the language. He knew the country. He knew the mindset and the cultural roadblocks that they might meet. So I think he felt a strong duty to do his part to help.
Right. And when these OSS officers would be overseas working like this behind enemy lines, obviously he wasn't wearing anything that would make people realize he was an American. Correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. They're wearing civilian clothing. If they're over in, Slovenia, they're wearing, more traditional clothing, nothing that would make them stand out.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they would move from place to place. So did they set up like a network that they would work with?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so they would partner with the partisan people, the partisan leaders. And like I said, that group was so effective at their jobs. And they had their own generals and officers. And so he would link up with one of those partisans who would lead them. He tells one story about trying to cross the road at night, and one of the German staff cars comes by. So they're all ditched in the woods hiding, and it goes over and it's shooting. But it's all going over their heads. And then the car goes by and they race across and escape. I mean, his life was in danger a lot. And again, if he's captured, he's killed. There's no POW for that scenario as a spy.
Right. There's no good ending there. They're not going to take you to the POW camp or anything.
No, they're not taking you to a POW camp.
You know too much.
One of the other things I wanted to mention is why there's so many downed airmen in this area is because these bombers are flying over from Italy and they're headed towards the Ploeste oil fields in the Romanian area.
Okay.
And those oil fields were about a third of the German supply of oil and fuel. They really wanted to take that out. So, but then on the ground, they knew these planes were coming over. So there was a lot of anti-flak and there was a lot of anti-aircraft gunfire that was taking down so many of these planes.
Okay, but 300 plus airmen, that's a lot within a short amount of time.
It was 1,600 total for all of OSS to get out of the country.
Okay. Did any of the OSS work with the other partisan group? Because you mentioned that there were two different partisan groups that did not like each other.
So even the U.S. initially worked with Mihailovich, and then tended to shift their focus more towards Tito. Tito was communist. So they did it for reasons that they thought it was more effective. I'm not an expert on this part for sure.
Okay.
So Mihailovich wanted to go back to a royal system when all of this was done. Tito wanted to go back to a communist system. But the United States, as time went on, did align more with Tito.
And obviously they had a very effective escape route there. They had a very good network.
Yes.
And so but Blatnik only worked with Tito's group.
Blatnik did only work with Tito's group. And one of the things, I found this fantastic report. It was like an after tour report that he wrote, where he wrote up everything he did. And to read the words that he wrote about the partisans was really beautiful. He was so impressed with them, with their level of commitment to helping the airmen, their level of commitment to helping Tito, and just their sheer bravery. Like they put themselves in harm's way 24/7.
I can't imagine. What else did you find out by reading the report? Were there any other interesting facts that you gleaned from it?
Two things. So when he was on his first mission in September of 44, he was putting together escape kits. That he would fly the bomber over and he would drop these escape kits where they knew that downed airmen were, that consisted of maps and some supplies, a radio, things that could help them move their way around the country. So he did that. And that was really his first mission into the country. And then after that, when he was sent to Paco, which is where he met up with Swante, I think he was very frustrated there. he wanted to play more of a role. He got his information from only one source in the partisans. He was not really allowed to talk to anybody else. And he was frustrated by that. He wanted to be going out and finding out more stuff and getting more sources. And I think he felt like he could be doing more and he wasn't.
Right. So they kind of made him narrow his focus.
Yeah, it really frustrated him.
Okay.
One of the sad stories I read, although not sad at the end, he was going from house to house and they were asking questions or not really sure what he was doing, but he was going house to house in this one village. And he went into this house and he saw a picture on a wall and it was of his relatives. So these were people that he was in his relative's house.
Wow.
And he couldn't say anything to them because he couldn't put them in danger. So then he just had to leave. But then I have later learned that he did go back after and was able to meet up and talk to them.
Oh, okay. To let them know, yes, your family is thinking of you.
Yeah.
Wow. Is there anything else that you would like folks to know about Blatnik? Things that would surprise us? Obviously, most of us don't realize that he was a World War II veteran. We cross the bridge named after him, daily, and don't know much about the man. I found it interesting that in his obituary in the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, they didn't even mention his service.
Yeah, that is surprising. And maybe it wasn't family that wrote the obituary. And so I'm not sure.
I did learn that he was a science teacher at one point.
He was education early on. He grew up in Chisholm and it was a very working class family. So they took in boarders and his dad worked in the mine. So I think education was important to him. He went on and got his educational degrees. He worked for the CCC, and I think this has an interesting tie back. So he worked up on the Canadian border with the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps. And he talks about how he's out in the woods. They're camping, they're fishing, they're learning how to feed themselves, take care of themselves in the woods. And those are all skills that were directly applicable to his time behind enemy lines when he could navigate, those situations and find food for himself and do all of that same sort of thing.
Right. Definitely. You have contacted the family, right? Have you kept in touch with them?
I have. I made contact with the family just fairly recently, and his daughter has been incredible. She has sent me a bunch of information that will only enhance the research as I move forward. And she's helped me learn how to pronounce his last name. And so she's just been wonderfully generous about sharing. And she's shared many more pictures of him than I didn't have before.
Do you anticipate putting together any kind of exhibit on Blatnik?
I think I would like to. One of the thoughts that's flying around is a Men Behind the Bridges exhibit. So an exhibit that would feature both of our World War II heroes that our bridges are named after and talk about both of them together.
Definitely. Now, did he receive any medals, Blatnik?
He did get the Bronze Star, a Bronze Star for valor, I believe. So I think it was largely, at least in the citation, it's largely because of his mission reports. It says he produced 68 mission reports of excellent quality. And so I don't know if his time as being a congressperson helped his writing, but apparently they were very pleased with probably how thorough he was and how descriptive he was in his reports.
Right, definitely. And then he went on to serve. Do you know how long he was a congressman?
28 years. Wow. He served. And then he was instrumental in getting the funding passed for the interstate bridge. The bridge that went up in 1961, and then it was named after him in 1971. He's also responsible for Voyageurs National Park.
How is he responsible for Voyageurs?
He wrote the legislation that turned that into a national park as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, 28 years, he did some good stuff.
He did. And he was known as the expert in the Balkans, right? So he would advise Truman on things that were going on in that area. Even after his World War II career, he stayed very involved in the politics in that area and tried to help from over here, help guide policies and things that would help.
Right, since he had that close connection to the area, both from his service and from his family ties.
And he could give advice and understand from their cultural point of view, hey, maybe that's not going to work because their culture doesn't think like that. Or
right.
I have not learned as much about his political career yet. But I do know he was considered an expert in the Balkans during his time as the congressperson.
Right. And you said he did write this one report that was released that now I think you sent it to me and it said top secret on it, right?
And it was declassified in 1977.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So probably why he wasn't answering any questions right after the war when people were interviewing him.
Right. But definitely a very important service that he did over there. Did he spend more time overseas also? That wasn't the only time he spent overseas.
He spent 3.5 years overseas. 8 months of that was behind enemy lines.
What did he do for the remaining time?
That's a good question. I really don't have much on that.
That's something that you're going to be learning by talking to his daughter.
That's something that I'm going to be doing more of. I know that he did, there was a lot of administrative stuff to do on the back end, putting together reports and getting things ready to go over there, gathering intelligence and analyzing intelligence. And I'm sure he did a lot of that as well.
Right. And did I read that he got his paratrooper's degree or certificate? He got it from the Royal Air Force Academy?
Yes.
Because they worked in close concert with England at that time.
The British were a big part of the OSS too. In fact, he met Randolph Churchill, who was Churchill's son.
Oh.
And they worked together a little bit. So Churchill's son was a part of the OSS in the Italy area as well.
Okay. Was he behind the lines with Blatnik?
No, I don't believe he was.
Okay. But maybe dropping the packages or doing something else. Yeah. And was Blatnik a pilot?
No, not a pilot. He was the one, like for the drops, he would just, prepare everything to drop and drop it. But then when the other times they're flying over, he's the paratrooper, right? So it's the pilot flies him over and he jumps out and then is on the ground.
I wouldn't do that. They were very brave.
They were.
All right. Did he have a lot of contact with the civilians when he was behind enemy lines?
Yes and no. So the one mission that he was on where he was more isolated, I don't think he did. But on one of his missions, he wrote a really, really beautiful report about encountering this group of civilians who had just had their whole village burned out. And they're straggling, to come to this safe place. And he meets them there and he's, they're all around a fire and he starts talking to them. And they're telling him this tragic story about how the Germans came in and burned everything down. And this dad watched the Germans kill his wife and his son. And it was within moments of it happening. So it was the closest eyewitness account he had ever received to an event that had just happened. And he was just amazed by their resilience, that these people were just refusing to be beaten down. And he admired them very much.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Brianna.
Oh, thank you so much for having me and helping to share these stories.
Definitely. And thank you for listening to Archive Dive. New episodes are available monthly at superiortelegram.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you have a topic you'd like us to explore, email me at mlockwood@superiortelegram.com.